Okay. So David has been a professional speaker, trainer and public speaking coach for 12 years. After performing stand-up comedy for 5 years, David has been running comedy courses for the last 11 years. He now trains business executives to use stand-up comedy techniques to be more effective and charismatic speakers. David works with many universities, teaching scientists how to speak to non-scientists. He also works one-to-one, helping people write and edit keynote speeches, pitches, and wedding speeches. David joined Toastmasters in 2003, and he's been in 12 district contest finals. It's massive. He's won Table Topics Championship 6 times and been a runner-up twice. David has a PhD in zoology. He spent 15 years as a full-time research ecologist, and today he still spends 25% of his time as a research scientist at the Natural History Museum in London. Please welcome, with a masterclass in impromptu speaking, David Jones.
Wow, Sam, thank you very much. I'll tell you, whoever wrote that, they're brilliant, aren't they? That's amazing. You should have got that person along, really. They sound magnificent. I'm looking around, but there's nobody else here, so I'll have to step up. Can I have co-hosting rights so that I can do some screen sharing, if that's all right?
Absolutely. Jose will do the honours. You should be there now. Thanks, Jose.
Brilliant. Let's see. Can you see that?
Yes, I can.
Good. Everybody else is nodding and smiling. That's brilliant. We've got 11 people in the room. Is that correct? According to my numbers, yep, good. If you're at home and you've got the washing machine going, or you've got the radio on, or you're watching the TV, then please leave yourself on mute. However, if you haven't, then please feel free to unmute, because I will be asking questions as we go along, and it will be brilliant to have your input. So I'm very happy if you want to just shout out any questions. If there's anything I say that you don't agree with, if there's anything that you don't understand, please interrupt me. I won't be offended. But I don't mind if you interrupt me, seriously. I would rather you ask your question and for me to try and answer it than we get to the end and we run out of time. Is that all right?
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you very much. Yes. Thank you, Val. Big thumbs up. That's what I like to see. And who else have we got? We've got Mr. Speakers, Pegasus. Do you mind if I call you? Yeah, hello. Nice to see you. Tim, great. Pegasus Speakers, what's your name?
Speakers. Pegasus Speakers.
What is your name?
You can call me, no, sorry, Jose. That's my name.
Jose.
You can call me Jay.
Jay. Good, thank you. And Tim, hi, Tim, good to see you. Grace, hello. Mohammed, hi. Jenny and Kayla. I tell you, I did a keynote once, 500 people. I used the whole hour just saying hello to people. So luckily there's only 11 of us, so we're all right. So a masterclass in impromptu speaking. That's a bit arrogant, isn't it? Yeah, I've set the bar quite high for myself there, I think, yes. So we'll see what happens. I understand I've got 3 hours, so strap in and we'll see how it goes. Let's admit, oh, you've done it, well done. There we go. Let me ask you a question then. Who do you think is a good speaker? Good. Name somebody who you think is a good impromptu speaker.
David Jones.
Yeah. There's a lot of people called David Jones. They're not all brilliant. Has to be said. But thank you.
Dara Breen.
Dara Breen, yeah. Who else? Excellent. Thank you for those contributions. This guy was regarded by many journalists and pundits to be one of the finest public speakers of all time. Scripted stuff was great, but he was also very good at speaking off the cuff. If the woman at the back had been slightly better at that as well, we may not have ended up with Trump, but who knows. There he is, Barack Obama, another absolutely brilliant public speaker and very good at speaking off the cuff. Churchill, he used to script all of his stuff, but apparently in the Commons he could also perform on his feet as well. And Michelle Obama, another brilliant speaker. All of these people are good speakers because they've learned how to do it. Nobody's born a great speaker. Nobody's born a brilliant impromptu speaker. I know this because it's taken me years to become good at what I do. I have a stammer, which you might hear as we go through the workshop. I'm pretty fluent now, but for throughout my childhood and right up into my teens, I couldn't string 5 words together without stammering, and so that left me a very timid, shy, introverted child who didn't want to engage with the world. My identity was as a stammerer, and that's how I thought about myself when I left the house, which meant I was terrified of talking to anybody because I would stammer, and so I would avoid it. And that stayed with me right up and throughout my university undergraduate days as well. And then eventually I realized, I needed to do something about it. And I started speaking in public and doing stand-up comedy and all sorts of other things to face my fear to help overcome my speech impediment. And as a result of putting in the time and effort, I have become competent at what I do, and I now run my own training company where the bulk of my income comes from standing up and talking to people, which 20 years ago I would not have believed it if you told me that was going to be my future. I'm only telling you this because if I can go out and become a 6-time district champion speaker, then everybody in this room can do that as well. I promise you. Yeah, you have to have faith in yourself, and you have to put in the time and effort and learn the skills, but that is available to everybody. If I can do it, if that shy, stammering kid can do it, anybody can do it, I promise. Bill Russell, he won the Table Topics champion when it used to be District 71 used to be UK and Ireland combined. It was all of UK and Ireland, and then they split it, and we are now the 91, is that right? Yeah, we're 91. Anyway, Bill Russell, who I know, won the Table Topics Championship in 1999 and 2002. And he said this: I don't think there is a more important thing we do at Toastmasters, nor one with more relevance than table topics. Most of our daily work and personal life is a series of impromptu speaking situations. Does your boss ask if you want to prepare an answer to a question, or does he expect an immediate answer? Yeah. Toastmasters is a brilliant organization, and it teaches you how to write a speech. But if you've got a speech coming up, then hey, you can prepare. If you don't prepare, you've only got yourself to blame if it goes badly. Whereas impromptu speaking, people are more frightened of that. But it's only lack of experience that makes them frightened of it. And the reality is that we come to Toastmasters, we don't come to Toastmasters to learn to speak in Toastmasters. We come to Toastmasters to learn to speak outside of Toastmasters. And most of those speaking situations will be impromptu speaking situations. So we need to get on top of it. Just give me a show of hands. Who wants to win a Table Topics contest? Yeah. Serena, yes. Anybody else? I can't see everybody. Let me just do this.
Yes, please.
Everyone here.
Everyone. Good.
Twice. Some twice.
Yeah. Thank you. Good. You all want to win. Brilliant. And so you should, because why wouldn't you? But let me ask you this. How many of you enter your table topics contest in your club? Okay, yeah, that's actually a pretty good show of hands. Often when I'm running this workshop at Toastmasters clubs and I say, who wants to win? And everybody goes, oh, yeah, I'd quite like to win. And then I say, who's entered their club contest? You know, there's about sort of 3 hands go up. And then I can tell the rest of them off and go, well, yeah, clearly you're not going to win. You need to enter. You've got to be in it to win it. And it's only fear that makes us not join in. So if you're all familiar with this, sometimes I get a lot of guests in the room who don't know how it works, but there are 4 contests, you know that. And if you win in any of those competitions, if you win in your club, you then go on to compete in the area with the other people who won in their clubs in your area. And then if you win there, you go to division. And if you win in division, you go to the district final, which when it was UK and Ireland was like a sort of national competition, if you like. Now District 91, we're in the south of England, I think. So not a national competition as such, but equivalent to it. The only one that goes on to an international final is the international speech, hence the name. But I think there should be more emphasis on impromptu speaking, because as the older I get, the more I realize this is critically important. Because how many times do we have to give a prepared speech a year? You know, maybe 2, 3, 5 times if you speak a lot, maybe once a month. How many times do you have to just speak off the cuff? Every day, all the time. Oh, there we go, D91, that's it. So anyway, I won the, what I did to find out what, because I was winning so many competitions, people ask, oh, how do you do it? And I thought, well, I don't know. So I better think about it, and I better get some information about that. So I did a survey of District 71 table topics champions. So I interviewed previous table topics champions and said, how did you win? What are you doing? What do you think is the skill set that allowed you to win the table topics competition? And I interviewed Bill Russell, he's won it twice, Alan Warner, Paul Carroll, David Jones. As I said, there's a lot of people with that name. Might not always be the same person. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Has there ever been a female winner of table topics?
Yeah, Burnett won it. Burnett Kaufman-Jones.
Yes, there have been a few, but that's a great question. Let's tackle it now. A disproportionate number of men win table topics competitions compared to, as far as I know, based on the statistics, compared to the proportion of women who are entering table topics contests. Now, fewer women enter the table topics contest to begin with, but of the proportion who do enter, they are disproportionately represented as you go further and further up through the rounds of the competition. So men on average tend to win more often. Why is that? That's a rhetorical question because I don't know the answer. Why aren't women winning the table topics competition more often?
Am I allowed to give an opinion? Is that okay?
Yeah, I've paused just for you, Jenny.
Oh, bless you. It's a topic I've thought about a lot, more in the workplace, to be honest, than contests, because I'm relaxed about contests personally. I think men grow up with an ease of humour that women don't necessarily in the same way. And so if we watch politicians, for instance, Politicians seem to often make mistakes where they try to use humour or a funny moment when they're women in a way that men tend to seem to be able to do it within their natural style and carry it off more. And it strikes me that table topics is disproportionately, you have to stand out and you have to be noticeable and you have to be memorable, I think. And the use of humour in an impromptu way, I think, is a huge help in that. So I think that's one of the things that might be a difference personally, but I'm really interested in what other people's views are.
I think you made a very good point there. Humour is very important in terms of table topics. I've analysed table topics finals and counted the number of laughs that people get. And there is a sort of a rough correlation. The funnier you are, the more likely you are to be placed. However, I would disagree with two things that you said. One, people who are naturally funny. I think being funny is also a learned skill. The people who appear to be natural at it, they've just perfected it so it looks easy for them. But, you know, they had to go through a long, tough learning process. And the other thing I would question is when you said that men are funnier. Oh, shame on you. The world is full of brilliant female comedians now. I think the problem in the past was there were numerous barriers to entry, which women were not prepared to fight against, or fewer women than men were prepared to fight against those barriers to entry. And there were some barriers that were specific for women. And so women just didn't do comedy as much. But the world has changed, luckily. In the last 10 to 15 years, we've now got a huge number of brilliant female comedians out there. Another issue which I think is important is there is some suggestion that men are often more competitive. And so they like competitions. They like the challenge of stepping up to a impromptu speaking competition because it's like, hey, we're all flying by the seat of our pants. That's the riskiest, biggest challenge you can do. Yep, I'll give it a go. Politics. Boris Johnson had, whether you liked him or loathed him, that public school confidence that he had, that bluster, allowed him to step. And he was a journalist, so he could get up and talk, even if you didn't always like his style. You could see that he was confident on his feet, and he was quite articulate on his feet, even if you didn't like his particular speaking style and his use of language. But anyway, an interesting tale for you. When I joined my Toastmasters club, my home club is Holborn Speakers, and I joined in 2004. And about the following year, or maybe 18 months after I joined, Liz Truss joined Holborn Speakers.
Wow.
Yes. And Liz, and none of us could believe it when she went off to become a politician. And we said, no, she's not. And I couldn't believe it even more when she became Foreign Secretary. She, again, whether you like her or loathe her as a politician, when you watch her as a public speaker, she has that unfortunate thing of not radiating confidence all the time. So have you seen some of those difficult interviews that she's had, where she's been asked questions and she doesn't know the answer, and you can see it on her face, and it's like, oh, she doesn't know. She realizes she said something wrong, and it's, yeah. And I just think that doesn't lend itself to being the Prime Minister. It's interesting, again, read into this what you will, but the last engagement, the last formal engagement the Queen had was to meet Liz Truss. She then took to her bed and died. I don't know what that tells me. Oh, Jenny, you're offended by that. I do apologise. Right.
Say she hung on for it. The alternate view is that she hung on.
She hung
to life for that.
Our third female Prime Minister. Yes. So thank you, Your Majesty. And Kevin Walsh and James McGinty, I interviewed all of those because I didn't want to be invited to run workshops and then just talk off the top of my head about what I thought was important. I wanted to sort of gather some evidence. Here's a comment from Paul Carroll, who is a brilliant impromptu speaker. I'm sure many of you know Paul, you've probably seen him. He's great at table topics. And he said, I attribute whatever success I've had at table topics to experience. My number one piece of advice is do more topics. And I think there's a lot of value in that piece of advice. And indeed, other table topics champions have made similar points and put similar emphasis on that sentiment. However, if it was just down to experience alone as to who's doing well, let me show you this. This looks complicated. Let me talk you through it. I did a big survey of Toastmasters, and I said, right, estimate how many table topics you have done over the years. And there are some people who've been in Toastmasters for 10, 15, 20 years. And so they have literally done hundreds and hundreds of topics in just a normal club night. And then what I asked them is, how many times have you won? How many times have you won a club contest? And the grey dots are all the people who've never won. Yeah. So these people, they've only done a few topics, less than 10 or 20 or 30 topics over their Toastmaster career, and they've entered a competition, but they've never won. And there are people up here, this person who's done, however, 500 odd topics he or she estimated, and they have also entered their club table topics contest, but they've still never won. And then the blue dots are the people who've entered and only won at the club contest. So again, there's people with lots and lots of topics, table topic experience, but they've only ever won at club. And then the yellow are people who've won at club and then gone on and won at area. And the green dots are people who've won at the division level. And the red dots are people who've won at the district level. That's me there, that dot there. So this is the sort of number of contest wins that people have had. And if there was a direct relationship between the amount of table topic experience you had and the number of contests you were winning, then there would be a much stronger, you could plot a line going up through here. There would be a much clearer pattern. And all these people down here with lots of experience would be winning more contests. But if you look, there's this bunch of people with only low levels of experience or intermediate levels of experience who are winning a disproportionate number of the competitions. And all these more experienced people are winning disproportionately fewer numbers of competitions, even though they're still entering. So what's going on? What are these people doing over and above having experience that's allowing them to win a disproportionate number of the competitions? What other things are they doing other than bringing some experience to the competition?
Can I just ask a question, David?
Yes. Could
it be that extraneous events are impacting that data? For example, people who've been in Toastmasters for 10, 15, 20 years are often the people who've been on the committee since the club got chartered 20 years ago. And what I've noticed is the longer people are in, the fewer contests they join, they kind of settle into like a supporting role, a giving back role, a mentoring role, and less active in terms of going into those contests. And I wondered if that impacted your data just a little bit.
I don't know the answer. I didn't ask people, are you a committee member?
Fair enough.
There might be some truth in that, but I know lots of experienced people who stay in Toastmasters because they want to enter the competitions.
Gotcha. Thank
That's
you.
me, and I know there are plenty of other people because I see the same faces in the competitions every year. And many of them are as long in the tooth as I am. But yeah, that might be a fact that there might be some people who over the years enter fewer competitions because they, for whatever reason. I'm not saying that graph I showed you. Well, I think there is a pattern in there that would need to be explained. How statistically significant it is. Well, I think I haven't done the stats on it. But I think there is some truth in what I'm suggesting, that it's not experience alone that explains who's winning competitions. Yeah, so based on 742 respondents to my table topic, to my survey, 51% of people who've been a member of a Toastmasters club for 1 year, so therefore they could have entered the table topics contest at least once, have never entered. And it's telling that 27% of people who've been a member for 5 years or more have never entered a table topics contest. So there are people out there who are reluctant to enter the competition, even though they're growing in Toastmaster experience, and you'd think, come on, step up, get involved, but they choose not to. Why is that? Why do you think some people aren't entering table? What is it that frightens people about the table topics?
Public speaking, off the cuff, ridiculous stuff.
Yeah, thank you, Jay. Yes. Speaking off the cuff is often even more scary than having to give a prepared speech, of course. And why is it scary? What is it that's worrying people and making them not enter?
It's my ego. I'm marvelous and I'm perfect. So today I'm just not in the mood because of the weather. So, but that's my ego.
So they give themselves a cop-out, but that's not the real reason, is it? It's not because,
No, it's me. This is my reason. Sorry.
That's your reason. Oh,
Yeah.
So you're perfect. Oh,
yes.
Jay, it's great to have you here. Magnificent. Aren't we privileged?
It's just a fear piece, isn't it, of people thinking that they can't do it, thinking they need to be perfect in order to do that. And it's the perfectionism part of the ego, if you like, that's coming in and saying no. But actually, it's the easiest contest to enter because you don't have to do any prepping whatsoever.
Yeah.
It's also the worry of not actually knowing what to say. I think that can be massive. And you don't actually know what kind of questions that someone's going to ask. You know, I got asked a terrible one at an area contest, and I went into a panic. I did get in first place with it, but I still panicked because I did not expect a question about my family life. It's just not what I was expecting. So you can, and I've seen twice recently someone get triggered, and it's very common to get triggered in topics contests. One person got triggered about a question, who would you like to meet in the afterlife? And his dad had just died. That's a very, so he was in shock. And I've seen that twice as recently. So I think people are frightened that they could get asked a question that will either trigger them or they'll just go blank and not know what to say. And that is scary.
Yeah, yes. But you won the competition, Serena. So you did.
The area one, yes. But I panicked initially and I was speaking, but I was thinking, what on earth am I going to say about this? And I just thought it was unusual and I didn't expect that. But I was lucky that I was able just to speak and so on. But it did put me off a little bit. But I've seen it happen to other people as well. And I think that is a big fear.
Yeah, people worry that they won't know the answer. People worry that they'll embarrass themselves, that they'll be judged. Well, of course, you're going to get judged. When you step on stage, people are judging you consciously or unconsciously. That's what happens. We just need to grow up and accept that. But we need to understand that usually, if it's a competition, there are certain expectations that should be followed in terms of the question that is asked. And these should be open questions which you can take in whatever direction you want. There shouldn't just be one single answer, because if you don't know that particular topic, you don't know the answer, then you're at a disadvantage, and that's unfair. And most people who are running competitions know that. But why are people nervous? This is the thing they say: I won't know the answer, I'll go blank, I'll give a poor answer and embarrass myself. But as I said, the reality is every table topics question has more than one correct answer. So you don't need to fear that, oh, I won't know the answer, because you'll be able to, you'll know, you'll be able to find an answer. And we know this is true because how often have you given a poor answer and then as soon as you sit down, you go, oh, I should have said that. Yeah. Yeah. What's happening there? There's a delay in finding that good answer that you have. Okay, you've got that good answer in your head, but the delay is caused by fear, by having all those people watching you. It's triggering that fight, freeze, or flight response, and then the reptilian part of your brain takes over, and the frontal cortex, which can do all this clever stuff and allow you to find the answers. Your frontal cortex shuts down, and you can't find that answer. It's not until you sit down and suddenly nobody's looking at you anymore, when you calm down, you go, oh, I should have said that. Of course, oh no. So we all have perfectly good answers. It's just that we can't access them when we get nervous. And so we need to overcome the nerves, and then we'll perform much better on our feet. So while on stage, it's only nerves that prevents you from accessing all those good answers that you have. So I get asked, well, how do you do it? You've won all these competitions. And what's your secret? My secret. Well, let me tell you. Do people say, oh, do you follow a particular formula or a strategy when answering table topics? No, I don't. And none of the other champions do either. And they all said things like this when I asked them. They said, no, I don't have any templates or guidelines for topics, as I feel doing this loses some of the spontaneous feel. If you're trying to shoehorn it into your formulaic response, whatever that topic is, if you're trying to force it, then of course it's going to sound awkward. You're not necessarily going to do a very good job at it. And that's not what the champions are doing. So people say, what you've got is you've got that 15-second magic window from when you hear the question and then you walk up on stage to that round of applause, and then you shake the contest chair's hand, and then you start speaking. You've got that 15 seconds when you come up with the answer. And people go, oh, it's because you're very, very clever, isn't it? It's because you're very smart, aren't you? And I go, well. And I say, no, I'm no smarter than anybody else. Well, I'm smarter than a lot of people, but I'm no smarter than anybody else in this room, because we know Toastmasters attracts smart people who want to, professional people. They often want to improve their career. So, we're all smart people in this room. That's not what's going on. There isn't that 15 seconds where you work out what the answer is. And neither am I channeling God. It's not that I walk on stage and God just tells me what to say. And I'm not him. So there isn't a 15-second window when you're walking on stage when you work out what to say. That's not what the champions are doing. How do people answer table topics? Well, again, this is the response I got from 742 Toastmasters. 71 go with the first idea that comes into their mind. And by the time, this was a separate question, which is why the numbers exceed 100%. But by the time they start speaking, 44% of people have worked out a central theme or an opinion. They've heard the question and they go, oh, I think this about, yeah, I'm going to talk about that. That's my, only 12% have decided on one or more secondary points to support that initial opinion that they have. And only 12% have a main conclusion in mind with which to end the topic when they start speaking. So that means for 88%, they start speaking and they've got no idea where they're going. And 45% of people just confess, I've got nothing planned. And it turns out that most of the, with the exception of Paul Carroll, who is very brilliant at sort of thinking on his feet and planning all this stuff. For the rest of the champions, they basically go with the first idea that comes into their head. They've got nothing to start with, and they just build the response as they're going along. And we don't know what we're going to be saying. We just make stuff up as we go along. There we go, 52% just make it up, including most of the champions. And the champions can do it because they're not nervous. So their brain is feeding them all of those good ideas. All those good ideas that you have get stuck between your frontal cortex and your mouth if you are nervous. Let me ask you, what's the 3 most important characteristics of a good table topic response? Anybody? I gave people 9 choices, the obvious sort of choices. What do you think people thought made a good topic response? Yes, Tim.
As you were suggesting, humour.
Yeah, Jay?
The conclusion, the call to action.
Oh yeah, having a conclusion. Yeah, Gina?
A strong message throughout.
Strong message, yeah. Anybody else? Val?
A good opening, something that grabs people's attention straight away.
Yeah, good, strong opening. Yeah, Jenny, your hand's up.
Yeah, a relevance that touches people.
Oh, okay. Yeah, touching people. Yep. Yeah, make it relevant for your audience. Yes. And Serena?
Something different from the other speakers. I think one contest I was at, just for the nature of the question, it was kind of implied that they wanted that you could talk about Christmas. So everyone talked about Christmas apart from one. So then you're different from the others if you think a little bit differently.
Absolutely, yes. I'm coming on to that, but yeah, don't say what everybody else is saying, even though you won't
know what everyone else is saying.
Otherwise, you won't. You won't know because you're outside. You don't know what they've said, but saying the obvious thing doesn't necessarily help you.
I think maybe a good structure as well. So even though it's just off the cuff, it feels like it's planned and prepared.
Yes, yeah. So what did people say? Well, here we go. As you said, giving a well-argued and convincing response with supporting evidence. Basically, we want a clever answer. That's what audiences like, isn't it? The second thing that they identified was having clear structure with a beginning and a middle and an end. Hey, we're Toastmasters. We want a speech structure. That's, we put value on that. And it does help the communication as well, of course. And the third thing they mentioned was being confident without any signs of nervousness. Yeah. How many times have you felt uncomfortable when you've been watching a speaker who is nervous? As much as you might sympathize and go, oh dear, it still makes you go, oh dear, they're not going to be very good. Or, oh. And if it's a topic and they're being nervous, you suddenly think, oh, they don't know what they're talking about. They haven't got an answer. Oh dear. And the fourth thing that came up, good use of humour. Although nowhere on the judging form does it mention humour, as I said, if you look at who's winning, people who are making the audience laugh tend to do better. So while the judges are looking for these things highlighted here, numbers 1, 2, and 3, judges are also seduced by humour. If you can make them laugh, you might get more points. And what are the 3 most damaging characteristics of a poor table topics? What shouldn't you do? Go on, quick. Anybody?
Waffle, just waffle and go on and on and on, and clearly just really don't. You're just sort of just speaking, but you have no clue what you're saying or why you're saying it, with no structure.
Absolutely, just waffle. Don't do that. Yeah. Anybody else? Sam?
I'm not a fan when they get stuck on facts and they're unable to release themselves into either a lie or fantasy or imagination. It's frustrating for me to watch.
Yeah. You want to see them spin a good story. Yes. Anybody else?
Yeah, I was going to say lots of hums and so, filling words. Not sure what they're saying.
Fillers, being hesitant. Yeah.
Also, I find I watched one topics which was clearly planned. So because you could adapt the question. So it was just, but everything, the movements, I did this and this time, but it was so staged because she chose a question where she could adapt. But I thought, no, because it didn't look spontaneous at all.
Because they suddenly thought, oh, I wrote a 7-minute speech on that. Oh, I could use that. And you see them sort of try and compress a 7-minute speech into 2.5 minutes. And you go, yeah, we know what you're doing. Yeah, they go, oh, da, 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 and then, da, 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 and it's very obvious. And again, judges don't like that because suddenly it loses its spontaneity and we go, so what did people say? The number one thing people didn't like was when the speaker is lost for words or they admit that they don't know the answer. Never do that. If you say, oh, that's a tough question, I don't know, it's like putting a gun to your head in front of the whole audience because they go, oh dear. Oh, how sad. They don't know. Aren't they rubbish? Number 2 is, going off topic and not answering the question. Now, if it's just sorry, my keys aren't working properly. There we go. If it's just a club night, a regular club night, and it's a club topics, a table topics session, and you go off topic, but you're still very entertaining and funny and everybody loves you, then you might win the ribbon for best table topic. But if it's a contest, that won't happen because you've got to respond to the question because that's on the judging sheet. And then the third thing people highlighted is appearing to lack confidence or showing signs of nerves. And another thing they mentioned, not making eye contact with the audience, because again, that's a sign of nerves. So if you're not looking down the barrel of the camera, or if you're not looking them in the eye, they lose faith in you and they stop liking you as much. But hey, we're Toastmasters. We know this. We know what we should be doing and what we shouldn't be doing. Has anybody read this book? Oh, Jenny, excellent. Right, Jenny, you've got 2 minutes to give us a précis of Daniel Kahneman's book, Thinking Fast and Slow. Timer, off you go. No, I'm joking. I do have the book and I've read the back cover. So my interpretation of the book is basically fast thinking is intuitive thinking. Basically, it's where you are an expert or you have previous experience of something and that's how you respond. You give an expert response based on your knowledge or your experience of whatever the topic is that the contest chair has just presented you with. You go, oh, Christmas holiday. Well, I've been on Christmas holiday or my favorite book or whatever it is. You go, yeah, I know about that. And you're off. and you've got that intuitive automatic response because you've done it before. That's all that means. There is a faulty response, which is where you misinterpret the question. Your brain goes, oh yeah, I know the answer to that question, but in fact you've misheard it or you've misinterpreted it, and you go off in the wrong direction. You give what you think is a brilliant answer because you go, oh yeah, it's about this, and you talk about that, and everybody's going, why are they talking about that? That's essentially what I do when I answer topics. I go with the first thing that comes into my head. I draw on whatever experience I have, and then I just run with it. And I fill 2.5 minutes with as much engagement and humour and lies as I can, based on my experience. The slow thinking is a sort of reasoning, deliberate process of thinking, which happens in real time in your head before you answer. It's more of it's a sort of conscious construction of measured arguments, like a debating style. And the best exemplar of that I know, if you've seen him, you can see the cogs in Paul Carroll's head turning as he's building his response. And he's magnificent. He'll say, that is a very good question, because in support of the question is this evidence, first of all this, and then this, which comes to this conclusion in support of the question. However, if you disagree with that, then there is evidence on the other side of the argument, which is this and this and this, which contradicts what you might think the answer might be. And you can see him constructing this beautiful, balanced argument in real time in his head. I can't do that at all. And indeed, the problem is nobody can do either of those if you're nervous, because your frontal lobes start to shut down, and it's your frontal lobes that's giving you all of those answers, whether they're just those fast, intuitive answers, or whether it's the more slow, deliberate construction of an argument. Can't do it if you're nervous. What's that?
Squirrel.
Yeah, what's it doing?
It's
distracting me.
Well, it might be, but what's it doing?
Looking over the fence.
It's sitting on the fence. Yeah. Never ever sit on the fence when you're doing topics, because you're not going to win, I promise. It's all very good saying, oh, well, that's a lovely question, and in favour of the argument is this and this, and then you could say, oh, on the other side there are these objections. I'll leave it up to you to decide, or I don't know which one has got the most supporting evidence. Don't say that. Yeah, don't. You're not going to win, I promise. What's that?
a barn owl.
It is a barn owl. What's it doing?
Fence sitting again.
No, it's been clever.
Hole next to the fence.
Yes, it's been clever, because what it's doing, you have to be like the owl rather than the squirrel. The squirrel will just sit on the fence. The owl will fly off one side or the other. So when you're giving your topic, even if you watch Paul Carroll, and if you watch any of the champions, the people who win, they might weigh it up and go, well, in favour of the argument is this, against the argument is that, and then they jump and they say, this is what I think is the stronger argument, and I know I'm right. Rather than just leaving it hanging. So give a definitive answer. This relates to something that I think it was what Serena was saying earlier. If you look at the judging forms, on table topics, about 55% of the points go on the content, and then 30 on the delivery, sort of how you say it and the body language, all of that kind of stuff, and 10% on the language and the choice of words. But if you just look at the content, if you give a poor answer, then the judges might give you, I don't know, 15 out of 55, because they'll go, well, that wasn't a very good answer, that wasn't very clever, was it? And I didn't like that. If, however, you give a good but predictable answer, then the judges will go, oh yeah, that's a good answer. Yeah, I like that. Oh, I'll give him 40 out of 55 because that's the answer I would have said. Yeah, that's my answer, and I'm smart, so they must be smart. Yeah, I'll give them. Yeah. But of course, but it's probably, or it might be a predictable answer. So half the people in the room are thinking the same thing. What you want to do is to give a good but unpredictable answer, because then nobody else, or hopefully nobody else in the room, including the judges, would have thought of it. So when you give that answer, people are impressed and go, oh yeah, God, that's a good answer. Oh, brilliant. Oh, I'll give 50 out of 55. Instead of, and what happens is, as the competitors come on one after the other, if the judges keep hearing that predictable answer, then they end up giving them fewer points because they go, oh, well, that's not original. Oh, anybody could have said that. If they're coming up with essentially the same sort of content, the judges go, anybody could have said that because they've already heard it before. So do yourself a favor, try and be unpredictable. People ask me, what am I doing when I'm on stage? What's going on in my head? And basically, it feels like I'm driving a juggernaut when I'm in those competitions. And it feels like I'm driving a juggernaut along a mountain road with a steep, rocky rock face on one side, and then on the other side is this rocky abyss. And if the juggernaut hits the wall, you're going to get smashed up. And if it goes over the edge, you're going to die. And I'm in the cab, but I'm not driving. The conscious bit of my brain is merely a spectator. And who's driving is my unconscious mind. And my unconscious mind is going, yeah, let's see what this baby can do. And I put my foot down and I just go for 2 minutes. And often I'll sit down and I won't be able to remember what I've said. And I can only think of a couple of occasions in all my years of Toastmasters and in the hundreds of topics that I've done. I can only remember 2, maybe 3 examples where during the topic, the conscious bit of my brain has said, oh no, hang on, don't go in that direction. And I've been able to reach over, put my hand on the steering wheel and steer it away, consciously decide to take it in a different direction other than what my subconscious mind was doing. But normally it's the subconscious bit of my brain, the frontal cortex is whirring away, and then it just feeds all these words into my mouth, and it doesn't go through the conscious bit of my mind at all. I'm not aware of what I'm saying. And that's because I'm in the flow, which is a mental state of being fully absorbed in an activity with energized focus and enthusiasm. And you see this with musicians and with sports people. They've practiced so much that they are just in the zone and they don't have to think about it. Being in the flow helps to avoid paralysis by analysis, overthinking it in the moment, and allows you to access all those good ideas your mind is generating in real time. If you have to stand there and go, ooh, what do I think about this? Ooh, how am I going to respond? Then you will suffer that paralysis by analysis, unless you're Paul Carroll, who can do that in real time. He can do that slow, conscious thinking. But for many of us, possibly most of us, we just have to run with the first thing that comes into our head and trust ourselves, to trust our brain to give us the good answer. People say, oh no, I can't do that. I can't trust myself because I might cross the line and say something I shouldn't. Your conscious brain still understands the social situation you're in. Yeah, your unconscious mind or your subconscious still knows where that line is, and usually it won't let you cross it. Occasionally you see it happen, and occasionally I've done it, in which case you have to suddenly the alarm bells go off in your head and you go, because the atmosphere in the room has changed. You go, oh shit, I crossed the line, and then you've got to backpedal, you've got to apologize, and you've got to try and pull it round. But normally you might just crash and burn. But on most occasions, your brain will tell you where that line is and it won't let you cross it. However, what is good is if you can go right up to the line and then put your foot over the line, but don't touch your toe down on the other side. So everybody knows implicitly what you're talking about, even though you haven't actually said it, because people find that entertaining and engaging. There we go. I'm coming to an end. How do I answer table topics? So this is my analysis of what I do, and then I'll show you what the champions said as well. So what do I do? There we go. My adrenaline gives me positive energy and excitement, not fear and anxiety. I've done it hundreds of times. I still get that rush of adrenaline, but I have reframed it as a positive, exciting experience, not something to be frightened of. Because if you allow that adrenaline to summon up fear, then it's the fear that trips you into fight or flight. Whereas if it's fun, if it's going to be great and I'm going to enjoy it and you're going to enjoy it too, come on, let's get on with it, then that gives you the energy you need to keep pushing the topic forward for those 2 minutes that you're on stage. I don't plan the content before I start speaking. I trust my subconscious to give me an answer. It's not the conscious part of my brain that is speaking to the audience. It's my subconscious that's just feeding me all this stuff. I do have some tricks, though, to improve what I'm doing when I'm in the flow. I will try to force an answer to come out by saying things like, I'll tell you what the answer is. And I sort of raise the stakes for myself and go, come on then, let's come up with the answer. That conscious brain is going, right, come on then, let's do it. Or sometimes I'll say, yeah, there are 3 reasons why I disagree. First, and I might have thought of the first one as I'm walking up on stage, but that's all I've got. So I'll explain the first one, and then by the time I've explained the first one, my subconscious has come up with the second one. I go, yeah, and secondly, and I've got that. And if I'm lucky, sometimes I'll get a third one. And if I don't, then I just carry on anyway, and half the time people don't spot that there wasn't a third point. And I'll always try and interact with the audience. I will always try and make it a conversation, try and involve them. Obviously, I need to manage that. I've only got 2.5 minutes on stage. So I will ask them questions and then I'll answer it for them, or I'll ask for a show of hands, or I will deliberately pick on one person who I know is likely to be able to answer the question. And I'll say, that's your answer, is it? And then I'll respond to what they've said, and then I'll slag them off and criticize them and poke fun at them in order to get that banter with the audience into my response. And audiences love that. They love to be involved. And finally, when the amber light comes on, I'll say in conclusion, and then I'll just carry on talking. And sometimes I can sort of spin it and sort of come up with a conclusion or a major point to end on. Sometimes I can't, and I'll just sort of recap 1 or 2 things I've said, or sometimes I can't think of a conclusion and I'll just keep talking. It doesn't matter though, because on the form, on the judge, well, it does matter. However, saying in conclusion is a good trick, because on the judging form, there's a box that says conclusion. So if you say in conclusion, some judges will just tick that box, whether you actually give a proper conclusion or not. But they'll go, oh, he's given a conclusion. Oh, that's good. That's clever. And then what gives the champions the edge? So I asked all those champions, why are you winning? What sort of things do you think has given you the edge? Paul Carroll, debating skills. He's done that all of his life, and it shows. He's brilliant. And if I had more time, I would join a debating club, because I think it's an invaluable skill. but I just don't have life. So I don't have time in my life to do it. But I wish I had when I was younger. Bill Russell did improv. And in fact, Chris Bowden, who you might know, who's been in some topics finals as well, and speech finals, he's done improv for years. He says it's really helped him. And improv is brilliant because basically when you're doing improv, you take examples and themes from the audience, and then you build on those. And that's the same in topics. The topics master gives you a topic, and then you've got to build on that. So if you've got improv experience, it helps. Stand-up comedy, I've done it. Bill Russell, James McGinty, we've all done stand-up. It makes you bulletproof. It gives you bulletproof confidence, because if you can stand up in front of an audience that you've never seen before and survive that and make them laugh, then hey, you think you are brilliant. And Toastmasters is easy. Toastmasters is a much less challenging thing to do, because nobody in that Toastmasters audience is going to shout, "You shit, get off." Having done stand-up gave me and Bill and James, I know because I've asked them, an unfair advantage in the competition, because we brought all that confidence and experience to the competition, and we know how to make people laugh. That is, compared to everybody else in the competition, that gives us a huge advantage. And we all speak frequently. All the champions that I interviewed speak regularly, at least once a month, and most of us, every week, several times a week, we're up on our feet in front of audiences as part of our work, or because we, for whatever other reason, we get all of that experience, which again gives you confidence. You get to the stage where you trust yourself. Yeah, I've done it before, I've done it well, I can do it again. I'll be fine. Bring it on. And there is a halo effect. Yeah, psychologists talk about this. It's the cognitive bias whereby audience members may assume a speaker is intelligent and has good content simply because they are warm, friendly, attractive, or humorous, or confident. And I've played on that. Making people laugh, people go, "Oh, he's good," or being confident, go, "Yeah, I know the answer, let me explain to you what it is." That sort of arrogant confidence. Again, some people like that. Audiences can fall for that. I mean, you've only got to look at Boris Johnson. Turned out he didn't know what he was talking about, and he was a liar. But for a long time, people liked him. Again, I hope I haven't said anything that's politically unacceptable and upset anybody. There we go. So my tips on how to win table topics, and many of these are applicable in in spontaneous speaking situations outside of Toastmasters and outside of competitions. Experience is essential. Practice in your club, enter every competition. When you're answering a topic, never say you don't know the answer, never. Always give a definitive opinion. Always say, "Oh yeah, I know what I feel about this topic," even if you don't, even if you're just making it up. Make it sound like you believe what you're saying. And speak with confidence, speak with attitude. Yeah, that attitude that says, "Yeah, I'm right. Yeah, listen to me. Because what I'm going to tell you is important. Yeah, I bring all this experience to bear on this topic. I know what the art." Yeah, let the audience feel that, and use humor. Everybody can do self-deprecating humor. You can all do irony, all of you. And there are very few situations where humor, the use of humor, is not appropriate or can't be woven into the situation. So again, the more you practice, the better at being funny you become. And always make it personal. Tell a personal story, even if you've stolen somebody else's story. It doesn't matter. Audiences love it when you rip your shirt open and bare your wounds and say, "Oh, this is what happened to me." Tell them that personal story. And don't be predictable. And finally, trust yourself. You've all got perfectly good competition winning answers in your head. I promise you have. You just need to be relaxed on stage, lose the nerves, so that you can then connect with your mouth, can then connect to those brilliant answers that you have in your head. There we go. I'm going to stop there, ladies and gentlemen. I've overrun the time. I do apologise. Is there anybody left? Now I've got my.
We're all still
down.
here, David.
I think I might have said in my blurb that I was going to get you to do some topics. If anybody can stay on and they want me to throw some topics at them, I'm quite happy to do that. But if you have to run, listen, thank you for your time. This has been brilliant. It's always nice to talk about myself. It's always nice to sort of explain what I think is important in terms of communication and speaking, and impromptu speaking in particular. So I'm going to shut up now. If anybody's got any questions, I would love to answer them as best I can. Oh, thank you.
Absolutely awesome. Really brilliant. Really brilliant.
So I'm going to stop the recording now.